Okay, Rabbi Sai, let's get started this week. Let's go for it. This week we're going to be discussing the mitzvah of Pidyin shivuim. Unfortunately, we never have around 225 Yidden captured behind enemy lines. And the show is what we could do to get them back. I'm not an elite combat soldier that knows how to sneak behind enemy lines and rescue them. I'm not a professional negotiator that knows how to talk my way through things and get them back. So what do we got? What can we do? So I think we all know the answer for us is Torah Utfila. Torah Utfila, how we're going to do it. Now we all know that we have a mitzvah, we have a chiyuv of keeping 613 mitzvahs. Now nowadays, I can't do karbanos. Right? We have no way of doing karbanos because there's no Beis HaMikdash. But we know Chazal tell us, Zois Torah Sa'olah Hi Ha'olah. That when we go and we learn about the mitzvah of Olah, we learn the Torah about Olah, that is as if we're mekayim the mitzvah of Olah. So Rabbi say, Zois Torah's Pidyin shivuim, Hi Pidyin shivuim. It's our time to learn the Torah of Pidyin shivuim, and with that, we should do our part to bring those held captive back in safety. Now, we even have it this last week's parsha. We have one of the big Pidyin shivuim cases, the big rescue missions that we see in the history, which is Avram Avinu. He goes and stands up against the four kings, the superpowers, the alliance of the four kings, and Avram Avinu stands up against them to rescue Lot. So, the Axis. And Avram Avinu stands up against them to get back Lot. So this is this we learned yesterday about recovering the shivuim. Now, the mitzvah of Pidyin shivuim is such a big mitzvah. I mean, we see that the way that the Shulchan Aruch refers to it. No, wait. Sorry. No, that was it. I said Reish Membeis. Maybe it was Reish Numbeis. Did I make a mistake? Yes, it was Reish Numbeis. Sorry. Apologies. Okay, so the Pidyin shivuim, Reish Numbeis, it discusses that the mitzvah of Pidyin shivuim comes before giving money for the niyim. Generally, when you have also money gathered for tzedakah, you can't change it for a different purpose. But if it's saved for building a shul, which is a very, very high up on the list, you can take that money and use it for Pidyin shivuim. And the Shulchan Aruch says, "Ein mitzvah gedolah ke Pidyin shivuim," and therefore you could use that money for whatever. And it goes the Shulchan Aruch goes further to say somebody that doesn't do Pidyin shivuim, hamaylan einam and Pidyin shivuim, the guy who just looks away, over. I'll look at this list of isurim that he's over. He's over al loy salman al avecha, loy tikvos es yodecha, loy salman adam riyecha, loy yiradnu beperech leinecha, and he's also mevatel the mitzvahs to say of pisoich tiftach es yodecha loy, umitzvahs v'chay achicha imach, and the mitzvah of the haftarech kamecha, and the mitzvah of the hatzel koichem lamois, the harbi dvarim keila. Besides that whole list of like 10 different isurim, it's also harbi dvarim keila. So it's a very, very important mitzvah you see from the Shulchan Aruch, this mitzvah of Pidyin shivuim. Okay, so we see it's huge. We should give tremendous amounts of money, tremendous amounts of resources to be able to do Pidyin shivuim. Now there's a Mishnah in Gittin, Mem Hey and Aleph, that says, "Ein Pidyin shivuim yoser mikadei d'meihem mifnei tikkun olam." You're not Pidyin shivuim for more than their worth. We'll discuss what that means, worth, because of tikkun olam. Meaning, with tikkun olam, by the way, it's code word because they were d'Rabbanan. Meaning the rice, I guess you would be paid to them for tremendous amounts of money, but midrabanan, we don't do more than their value. Okay, fine. Why? So is that the Gemara? The Gemara has two possibilities as to why we're not paid to them for more than their value. The first possibility in the Gemara is because it's duchtecha de tzibura. It's too much of a burden on the tzibur. If every time somebody gets hoida, the tzibur has to come up with $20 million to get them back. And then 2 years later, they're going to $20 million again. That's going to really hurt the tzibur. We got tuition, we got chasanas, we got kosher food. We got a lot on our hands to go for the tzibur to have to pay $20 million to be paid to somebody, nish pashut, and therefore mitnei tikkun olam, Chazal understood, and they were masakin. We don't have to go yoiter midameim. Second option is because if we go and pay large sums of money, what are we going to be doing? We're going to encourage future kidnappings. The kidnappers are going to say, hey, this is a good business. This is better than nursing homes. And they're going to go and, why not? Well, this is babish geschmack. One guy, $20 million, great. And they're going to keep on going and kidnapping more and more and more, and therefore you are not allowed to pay yoiser mikadei demehem. And just a simple idea, simple question you may be thinking, which is what I thought when I read this at first. Okay, so why are we paying at all? They're still making money. Even if you do kadei demehem, so they make, let's say, $500,000 per captive, right? So that's still a pretty good business, and they're going to continue doing it. So we should use the American slogan, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Even though it's not true and America does. But that's the official American policy, that we don't negotiate with terrorists. Let us not negotiate with terrorists. We won't pay a penny. And then they for sure won't do it again. The answer is we actually want to get the people back. And we want to do the mitzvah of Pidyin shivuim. So what's the point of the not paying yoiter mikadei demehem? We don't want the kidnappers to target Jews. We want the kidnappers to, view us as anybody else. We don't want them to see that the Jews care about their people more than everybody else cares about the people, and the Jews are going to come up with ridiculous amounts of money. So to stop the kidnappers from specifically targeting the Jews, we're going to pay the regular amounts, but we're not going to go above that. But we do want to pay and get the people back. Okay, so what's nafka mina between the two possibilities, whether it is not to be too much on the tzibur versus not to encourage future kidnapping? So the nafka mina is pretty simple. If the guy got a rich father, if there's a rich daddy, or a rich relative, or a rich benefactor, or whoever it is, so let's say he says, I'll pay the $20 million. The father says, I'll pay the $20 million. If it's the first problem that we don't want to, it's a problem for the tzibur, okay, there's nothing to do with the tzibur. The individual's paying. Tzibur's thrilled. But if it's the issue that it's going to encourage further kidnapping, so I don't care if the individual has the cash, it's still going to encourage further kidnapping, and that would be a problem. Okay, so how do we paskin? So the Ma'aseh Machlokes Rishonim, the Roiv Rishonim go with the second reason. Roiv Rishonim say it's not to encourage further kidnapping. How do we paskin? So the Bach actually says he's leaning towards the first shot that we don't want to have a burden on the tzibur, and therefore he says you can't be meicha on anybody who would decide by his own right to go and pay for it. However, the Rambam, back to the Rishonim, he's a very key Rishon Psak. So the Rambam says that we go with the second reason. It's not to encourage further kidnapping. Zat the Shulchan Aruch, not to encourage further kidnapping. So that seems to be the psak. The psak seems to be, even if the individual wants to get up there and pay to redeem this guy, seemingly the individual is not allowed to get up and pay. Fine. Now, to be clear, everyone agrees that the tzibur can't pay. We're just having a discussion whether the individual could get up and pay. Now, what about a government? I heard somebody making a claim that by a government that, that's going to be okay because it's not an individual, it's not the tzibur. I think that's taisha b'tais. I think the government is a prime example of the tzibur paying. The government is the organization that holds Tzibur funds. You might not like every time how they spend it or what they choose to spend on. That could be the case in any tzibur, that you don't like how the apitropos of how the Gabbai Tzedakah decides to spend the funds. But at the end of the day, the government funds are a clear example of tzibur dika funds. And that's what I would think. Now, what is yoter mikdei d'meim? You say you're not allowed to overpay. What is overpaying? What does it mean to overpay? So, according to the Maram Lublin, it means whatever the person will be worth in the slave market. And the Maram Lublin actually says, I don't know where he was, wherever in Europe he was, Lublin. Wherever, I couldn't find Lublin on a map, I'll tell you, to be honest. Poland? That's what I figured. Okay, so he said over there, we don't have, it was like, I don't know, we don't have slaves. But you have to go somewhere where there were slaves. You know, America, they had slaves. You have to go to a place where they did have slaves, Africa, and see what it costs. The only problem is it's not actually so simple. I'm sure the slaves were more expensive in America than they were in Africa. So it's working exactly on that. Well, we'll put our finance kashas on the side. But he said you go, you see what the cost is in a place where they sell avadim, and that's what we do. One thing I wanted to mention before we even go further, I saw this thing asking for people to learn during the hours that the Iker fighting is going on, which is from approximately now until 5 in the morning. That's what I heard. This is when the Iker fighting starts in the evening hours. So Baruch Hashem, we're learning the sugyas during this misugel time, or this needed time, I should say. Okay, so fine. So that's what the Maram Lublin says. The Radbaz says, no, that's not pshat in yoter mid'meim. Yoter mid'meim means the normal going price to get to ransom back somebody who was kidnapped. Now, I don't know, it could depend on different societies, what's more, what's less. I don't know exactly what's more and what's less between the cost of eved versus the normal ransoming price, but the Rabbah says it's the normal ransoming price. And the way that I explained it earlier makes a little bit more sense within the Rabbahs, but I don't know how different those numbers are. I'm not really sure. Okay. Now, we have a South African. What's more expensive, ransoming or eved? Okay, fine. So, fine. Now let's get involved. That was discussing money and finances, right? What about when you're not? They don't want money. When they want terrorists, they don't want you to pay in dollars and cents. They want you to pay in terrorists to get the hostages back. So there's going to be two things that we're going to need to deal with, two sections. We're going to have to deal with the Takana D'Rabbanan of not paying yoter mikdei d'meim, not overpaying. And we're also going to have to deal with the potential issue of we're creating a sakanas nefashos to Klal Yisrael by freeing those terrorists. So,
do we not discuss who's being released, who's being held captive if they Shemai Torah?
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there soon. So there's going to be a two-part question. So the first, we're going to start off discussing whether the yoter mikdei d'meim, whether that's a problem, and then we'll discuss the sakanas nefashos. So, is there such thing as overpaying in terrorists? So I heard from somebody, he was a Rav of, I don't know if he's alive or not alive, but he was a Rav of Lud, Reb Nosson Ortner, that he said Jewish life is of tremendous value, and therefore one Jew's life is worth more than 1,000 terrorists' life. And therefore it's not considered overpaying to trade. I imagine he was referring to Gilad Shalit in this statement, that it's not overpaying to pay trade one Jew's life for 1,000 non-Jews. Now, I felt that logic was not convincing, because if we're going to be valuing Jewish life in that tremendous way, then there's not going to be any issues of giving too much money either. Meaning, once we're going into that world of, you know what a Jewish life is, it's worth more than 1,000 Arab So okay, so one Jewish life is worth more than $20 million. And therefore you no longer have the issue yoytim mikadei demeim. So I don't find that argument particularly convincing. I saw somebody, Avim Yitzhak Kalev, I'm not really sure exactly who he is, that he said the yoytim mikadei demeim would be the normal amount that would work in a prisoner swap. So you look at a non-Jewish place, you go, I don't know, Russia, Ukraine, when they're going to do a prisoner swap, what is it going to look like? I imagine it's probably going to look like more or less 1-for-1. And therefore, if that's what the normal case is 1-for-1, so you'd be allowed to do 1-for-1, but more than that normal amount. And it might not be exact. They might, they'll give you 250 for your 180, whatever you have, something, close maybe. So that would be allowed with it, but more than that would be yoytim mikadei demeim, and that you would not be allowed to. That was what Rav Avim Yitzhak Kalev wanted to say. And, sounds pretty reasonable. That is the value in normal prisoner swap. Now, and to be clear, when it comes to prisoner swaps, this is certainly the tzibur is the one paying. We're not going to get into it. It doesn't make a difference whether you go with the first answer or the second answer of what's the tikkun olam, because this is the tzibur's paying. Either you view it that the government's paying the terrorists, and that's the tzibur, or you'll view it that the tzibur, who now has more sakana in their life, because these terrorists are let out. So either way, it's the tzibur is the one who's paying. So within all opinions, it would be a problem if it is yoytim mikadei demeim. So seemingly this is yoytim mikadei demeim. Now, is there ever a heter to overpay? So there's a Gemara in Gittin in Chesed Aleph that discusses the story of Rabbi Shiur ben Chananya it's really one of those Gemaras that you can learn in Tisha B'Av. Rabbi Shiur ben Chananya, when he went to Rome, he saw that there was a boy in the jail, Yofa and Naim, etc., etc. And he said, I don't remember what he said. The boy answered something with your shemayim, and he says, "I'm not leaving here until I'm paid to the boy." And it was paid to him from Mom and Harvey. So Tosfos on Memhei and on Memches both ask the same question: how could you pay yoytim mikadei demeim? Surely it's a mefurish Mishnah. The Mishnah says that you're not allowed to be paid to yoytim mikadei demeim. How could you pay Mom and Harvey? Mom and Harvey sounds like you're paying. I'm not leaving until and he paid Mom and Harvey. So surely you're not allowed to. So there's three answers within Tosfos. Two answers are Memhei, two are Memches, one of them's doubled. So the answers are, the first answer is that Sakanas Nefashos Shani, when it's a case when his life is at risk, there you're allowed to pay more than yoytim mikadei demeim. There you're allowed to overpay. The second answer, which is the answer that actually is stated in both Tosfos, is Talmid Chacham Shani. By a Talmid Chacham, you're allowed to overpay. Oh, but he was a kid, he wasn't a Talmid Chacham. Oh, by the way, who did this kid end up being? He ended up being Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. He ended up being Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, this kid. That's who he ended up growing. But he was still a kid, he wasn't a Talmid Chacham. So Tosfos says even a potential Talmid Chacham, a budding Talmid Chacham, you're allowed to be paid to the yoytim mikadei demeim. That applies. That's in both Tosfos. And the third answer is B'shas Chorban Shani. So let's just explain these answers quickly. So the rationale of the first answer, Sakanas Nefashos, is there's Isurim, there's things you're not allowed to do, but when it's Sakanas Nefashos, then all bets are off. Everything, you can do anything for Sakanas Nefashos. The reason why it is a little bit difficult, this answer, or very difficult, is it sounds like, especially if you see if you don't do Pidyin shivuim, you're lo sam al dam recha, you're not saving the guy's life. It sounds, I would assume the normal case of somebody who's captive is a matzah of Sakanas Nefashos. That's what I would assume.
I don't think so.
Maybe not historically. I don't know. It sounds like it from the Shulchan Aruch.
The Arabs, maybe.
No, the Arabs for sure. The question is historically. It seems like the Maram Rothenberg wasn't.
They sold them.
Yeah.
They sold them. They kept them for themselves.
Yeah. So I don't know. But that was that's Tzarchin on that answer. I'm not really sure. Tzarchin historically. The rationale for the second answer of Talmud Chacham Shani is either that a Talmud Chacham has tremendous value, and therefore you're not overpaying, or since the slight variation, since the tzibur needs them, then the tzibur could overpay. And the third answer of B'shas Chorban Shani, the way that the Ramban and the Meiri explain it, is that during the time of Chorban, they're kidnapping anyways. It's not an issue that you're going to encourage kidnapping. It's the wild, wild west out there by B'shas Chorban, and therefore they're going for you. And if they're going for you, we're not worried that you're going to encourage. If they grab you, they'll take you. Okay. So, who do we follow? So the first teretz of Tosfos says we could overpay by sakanas nefashos. Now, this case with the Arabs is for sure pashud sakanas nefashos, no question about it. The Arabs are more than ready to kill these people. So the Maram Milublin says no, you can't overpay by sakanas nefashos only if he's a Talmud Chacham. Meaning the Iker answer is the second answer of Tosfos. The Knesset Cheskel also says like the Maram Milublin. And he says we don't allow overpaying by Pekuach Nefesh. And he explains a very pashut svara. He says, because think about it. What's the whole reason you're not allowed to overpay? Because you're just going to encourage them and incentivize them to do more kidnapping. So if it's only by Pekuach Nefesh matzahs that they're encouraged and incentivized, what are you doing? You're encouraging and you're incentivizing them to make it a matzah of Pekuach Nefesh. So they know, how do I get the big bucks when I say I'm going to kill them if not? So that's exactly what they're going to do. And therefore, that's counterproductive. So that is the Knesset Yecheskel. Now the Piskei Tshuva brings down the base hill that says, like he follows the first Pshat of Tosfos, and he says we do overspend by Pekuach Nefesh. The Marshal as well says you are allowed to overpay when it's a matzah of Pekuach Nefesh. So you see, this is an old machlekes whether you're allowed to overpay by a matzah of Pekuach Nefesh. Now, but by a Talmud Chacham, it seems that everybody agrees you're allowed to overpay by Pekuach Nefesh. We'll get there, yeah? But it seems by a Talmud Chacham, everybody agrees you're allowed to pay. Now, I was assuming that the reason why everybody agrees to that Talmud Chacham is the Talmud Chacham, that was the one answer that was there in both Tosfos. So you see, at least from Tosfos, that seems to be a Iker answer, because they made it to both Tosfos. That was a personal thought. I don't think it's conclusive, but it was something I was thinking. Now, how does the Shulchan Aruch paskin? So if you look at the Shulchan Aruch, he doesn't mention anything about Pekuach Nefesh. He just says you're not allowed to overpay. So from the steamus of the Shulchan Aruch, it seems quite clear that he holds you are not allowed to overpay, even if it's Pekuach Nefesh. And as I pointed out earlier, he's saying that if you don't do this, you're not saving the guy's life. That was one of the Isurim by not doing Pidyin Shuyins. It sounds like we're talking about a matzah where the guy potentially could die.
He doesn't hold of any other reasons?
No, he brings, the Shulchan Aruch brings down Talmud Chacham.
Oh, he does.
Shulchan Aruch brings down Talmud Chacham. So the Shulchan Aruch does bring down Talmud Chacham. So that seems to be the Iker answer that the Shulchan Aruch is going like. Now, it's interesting. Nobody seems to be talking about the Chorban Shani, B'shas Chorban Shani. I didn't see anybody really go with that answer. Now, surprisingly, even though the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber, Maran, says, Talmud Chacham Shani, but doesn't bring down Pekuach Nefesh, Ravadya paschins that by Pekuach Nefesh you could overpay. The Shevet Levi also paschins. He says there's a Meiri that, one of the newly found Meiris that says you could overpay by Pekuach Nefesh. And the Shevet Levi claims that if a lot of these earlier Achronim would have seen that Meiri, they also would have paschined that you're allowed to overpay by Pekuach Nefesh. That's the claim of the Shevet Levi. And therefore the Shevet Levi does also allow you to overpay. But once again, it seems that most of the poskim will not allow you to overpay by Pikuach Nefesh, but there definitely is a, I just brought Rabbi Vadia and Rav Vosner, one of the most chash of Sephardi posik seemingly, and we'll call him definitely a top 3 Ashkenazi posik of the big players who are allowing you to overpay by Pikuach Nefesh.
Also a big call on halacha.
That?
That if you find a svar of a rishon that the Achronim didn't see,
correct.
This
is very controversial. We know the Chazon Ish didn't want to look at a Meiri, and Rav Shach didn't want to look at a Meiri, which wasn't part of the Messiah. Whereas Rav Vosner was very happy to look at the Meiri, Moshe Feinstein was very happy to look at the Meiri, the Mishnah Brewer was very happy to look at the Meiri. So this is obviously a loaded topic. Okay, so as Gilam brought down before, what about what's going on with Maram Rottenberg? Everybody knows the famous story. The Maram Rottenberg was put into jail, and he his Talmidim wanted to gather the money. He had Talmidim, the Rosh, the Mordechai, or from the Talmidim of the Maram Rottenberg. Maram Rottenberg was one of the Balei Tosfos, and they wanted to collect money to be paid to him, the Gadol Adar. And he refused. He said, no way, you can't be paid to me. And he even ended up dying in jail. And they didn't release his body. His body was in jail for 14 years until an individual, not the tzibur, went and he was paid the Maram's, whatever was left of his body 14 years after he passed away. And it's actually, till today, he's buried next to the Maram Rottenberg, the one who was paid to his body. Okay. So that's the story of the Maram Rottenberg. So the Mashal asked, wait, hold on a second. Didn't you read the Maram Rottenberg? Didn't you read the Shulchan Aruch? He's like, no, they didn't write it yet. No, but do you know the halacha that Talmid Chacham Shani, you're allowed to overpay for a Talmid Chacham? So the Marshal explains the reason why the Maram Rottenberg didn't let himself be paida is because you're only allowed to be paida Talmid Chacham when they don't chap that they have a Talmid Chacham. If they don't chap that it's a Talmid Chacham, then you can be paida the Talmid Chacham. But the Marshal says by the Maram Rottenberg, they knew good and well who they had. So if they're going to pay $20 million in whatever currency they had back then, if they would have paid $20 million equivalent for the Maram Rottenberg, what would have happened? They would have chapped the rush the next day. They would have went after the next Talmid Chacham. So therefore, that's why the Maram Rottenberg said, since they knew who he was, therefore you couldn't be paid him. That's how the Marshal explains.
They'll just chap in the other guy.
Right. So let them chap another guy. If they chap the other guy, so we won't be paid him. The Maram Rottenberg is worth $20 million. Yankel isn't.
So they realize eventually that they're not going to get.
They're going to be like, "What's going on? You just were paid to that other guy with the Streimel. Why can't you be paid to this guy with the Streimel?" Yeah.
Sure.
Fun. So, but Maram Rottenberg was actually, they say it was a guy who went off, a maskil, whatever you would call it back then, who snitched on him or whatever. Yeah, whatever the story is. Okay. So now let's get we spoke about the quickly the heter of B'shas Chorban. Nobody seems to really mention that much. But the rationale of B'shas Chorban is they're going to kidnap anyways. Now, by Israel doing a prisoner exchange with Hamas, they're definitely going to be encouraging future kidnappings. It's true that Hamas tries to do whatever they could, but when they know that they have such a powerful tool that they could get so many prisoners free, it certainly encourages kidnapping. So at first glance, this is a big problem. But then if you think about it a little bit further, like these 240 people, if they weren't kidnapped, what would have happened to them? They would have been killed. So it's actually in a way not so bad that they got kidnapped. It's not so bad that they were encouraged to get kidnapped because they would have got killed anyways. It's not like they would have been fine. So it's not so clear how to view this as such a bad thing. Tzarchim. I don't know. Okay. But the Lamaisa, they're putting in more effort to kidnap than they would to kill. So it's a little unclear exactly how to view it. Fine. When Rav Hutner was in the TWA plane that got hijacked, and he was now held captive, his Talmidim wanted to raise a lot of money to ransom him. They went to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, and Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said, you're not allowed to ransom him. You can't ransom him. Why? They said the idea of Pidyin shivuim and paying money to ransom is only at a time that it's a peaceful time. But when it's a time of war, you can't. Why? If you give them $30 million, that $30 million that you're going to give them is going to go to help their war effort. It's going to help fund more terrorism. And therefore, you're not allowed to pay them. Which is, in a way, almost the exact opposite of the third teretz. Not only is he not taking the third teretz of B'shas Chorban, La Halacha, he's actually even flipping it, and you hear the svara. Because what are they going to do with all that extra money? I mean, imagine right now Hamas was asking for money, and you would give them $1 billion to free the slaves, the captives. What are they going to do with the $1 billion? We know it won't be good, right? And certainly, if they want 4,000 or 5,000 prisoners, Israeli prisoners, what's going to happen with those 5,000 Israeli prisoners? They're going to just do more terrorism. So it's quite clear from Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky that he would not be cool with this. What do you say? Maskim?
That's exactly what happened with Gilad Shalit.
Exactly what happened,
These
correct.
Are all the guys.
These are all the guys, exactly. So to sum up so far, even though there was a svar otherwise, this would be called, there's a Gezer D'Rabbanan not to overpay. This would be called overpaying. 4,000 Israeli prisoners for 240 captives would be considered overpaying. The Shulchan Aruch seems to disallow overpaying by Pekuach Nefesh, but surprisingly, there are significant poskim that do allow overpaying for Pekuach Nefesh. I want to add over here a rule brought in the Shulchan Aruch that I have decided.
Other ones that do allow, they don't talk about peaceful times.
They don't differentiate. Yeah. All right. So there's another halacha brought in the Shulchan Aruch that I decided not to focus on today. I decided it wasn't the right thing to focus on this halacha, but mitzad sheni, I felt it was the wrong thing to leave it out. So I'm just going to say, as a one or two liner, there is a halacha that we are not poida a mummer. We would be poida a tinik shenishba. A mummer l'teavon is what to discuss, but we're not going to discuss that any further. But I just want to put that out on the table. Now, until now, we discussed about the issue of there's a gezer d'Rabbanan of not being poida yotim midei d'meim. What about, there's another issue. The other issue is that you're putting Klal Yisrael in potential danger by allowing these 4,000 killers out free. You're putting Klal Yisrael into a matzav of Pekuach Nefesh. By saving these hostages, I'm putting the rest of Klal Yisrael at risk. So we know that there's a rule that I'm not allowed to choose one person over the other. If, I can't decide to have this guy get killed to save that guy's life. Because who says we don't know whose blood is redder? And therefore the halacha is sheva al taseh. You don't do anything. So if I don't trade one pekuach nefesh for another pekuach nefesh. And therefore, if I am to take these people out of a matzah of pekuach nefesh, I need to put other people into a matzah of pekuach nefesh. That seemingly would not be allowed. Now, there's two arguments, however, that would say that it could be allowed. It's true that I can't take this person out of Vadei Pekuch Nefesh by putting this other person in Vadei Pekuch Nefesh. But I would be able to take this person out of Vadei Pekuch Nefesh at the expense of putting somebody else in Safek Pekuch Nefesh. So if one was Vadei Pekuch Nefesh and one was Safek Pekuch Nefesh, it would be allowed. So I think this is a good argument, and I saw this argument brought. I think it's a good argument if it was one captive for one terrorist. Meaning, we see like 80% or 90% of these terrorists go back to their old ways. Not 100%. So therefore, if I was trading one captive for one terrorist, it would be a fine argument. This one captive is in Vadei Pekuch Nefesh situation, and this one terrorist, even though he probably will go back to terrorism, but who knows if he'll be successful, and who knows a lot of things, who knows. Maybe he'll have a heart attack, maybe he'll have a change of heart, I don't know what. So therefore, that's a suffix, and therefore that would seemingly be not a problem. But I think we could all agree, to me it seems pashut, that if we're going to allow 4,000 of these guys out, that is clearly Vadai Pekuch Nefesh, Sakaras Nefashis. There are 4,000 proven killers. I don't know if every single one killed somebody, but there's a lot of them that actually killed somebody before. These guys, letting these 4,000 guys out, is Vadai Pekuch Nefesh. And therefore, I don't like the argument when there's 4,000 of them.
Statistical Vadai.
It's a statistical Vadai, for sure. Now, I know you could start handling, and do you want to do each one individually and each one? But I think it's a group. You're not really doing each one individually. You're allowing the full group to be let free. Now, there's another argument, potential argument. There's something called Pekuch Nefesh Lefanav and a Pekuch Nefesh Rechoika. That's far away. There's a famous tshuva, the Noidim Yehuda, where they asked the Noidim Yehuda, can we do an autopsy on this body? It would be a isser, not an isser of killing somebody, Pekuch Nefesh, B'zayin HaMeis, a lav of B'zayin HaMeis. And by doing this autopsy, we're going to be able to uncover some medical facts about the diseases that causes death, and now we're going to be able to save many lives. So could we do a lav today that will save many lives in the future? Seemingly, everything's nitcha before Pekuch Nefesh, so why not? Lefanenu. And Noidim Yehuda says, nope, you can't do that. That's Pekuch Nefesh Rechoika, that's far away. The Pekuch Nefesh isn't here in front of us right now, and therefore there is no heter. The Isser isn't knocked away from the Pekuch Nefesh that will come later, and therefore it will be usher to do the autopsy on these bodies. On a similar note, Moshe Feinstein, based off the Noidim Yehuda, the famous tshuva, he doesn't allow a kohen to go to medical school if it will mean that he has to be metamal l'mesim, even though in the future he'll become a doctor and probably save lives. So sorry, right now you don't have the life in front of you to save. So right now you can't be metamal l'mesim to go through the medical school, even though at the end you'll be a doctor. Now, that's, because it's not lefanav. Another Geschmack question. They asked Rav Shlomo Zalman when they were building Hadassah in Kerem, and they said, listen, it's going to take, I don't know the exact amount of time. Let's say it will take 6 years to build Hadassah in Kerem. But if we build it on Shabbos as well, so then we'll have it built in 5 years. So it'll be built a year before. Now, if you understand the city with, I know nowadays it's over 1 million people. I don't know exactly how many people were in Yerushalayim at that point. But if you build an extra hospital in Yerushalayim, and it's also pretty far away from the other hospitals, it is absolutely pashut in that 1 year there will be many lives saved. I don't know how many tens, 50, 70, 100 lives. I don't know the exact number of how many lives will be saved by having a big hospital there a year earlier. But lots of life. It's for sure it's going to save lives. Shlomo Zalman said you are not allowed to build it on Shabbos because it's a pekuach nefesh rechaika. Even though we know it, statistically we know it to be true. And people will die by you not building on Shabbos. You cannot build on Shabbos. It's a pekuach nefesh rechaika. Yeah, they ended up, I didn't know who. I heard they ended up asking somebody else, and after some Zaman said no, they asked somebody else. I gave a yes, and they built.
There's
But
a statistical lefanenu. That was the Shiloh.
Yeah.
Considered lefanenu.
very good.
And that's what it is.
They said it is considered lefanenu.
So, but Shlomo, we could see this is what the handle. Another shayla that we have in this, which is something that happens. Massive snowstorm late Friday afternoon in Yerushalayim. Yeah? We've had a couple of them over the years.
One inch of snow.
Huh?
1 inch of snow.
No.
What do you mean Israeli snowstorm?
Yeah.
Israeli snow.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying that's about something serious. Yeah, you have a real one. Remember that one? It was Friday was a fast day like 12 years ago? Remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And the massive snow, and I don't remember what, it was crazy. No electricity anywhere except, but okay. So, whatever. So the question is, could they plow the streets on Shabbos so that ambulances will be able to get back and forth around the city on Shabbos? Now, at the time of their plowing, there hasn't been the phone call yet for the ambulance. They want to plow now, so when there's calls for the ambulance, they'll be able to get to the patients on Shabbos. They have the heter b'kuach nefesh. There, Rav Yashiv and Rav Shlomo Zalman both paskin, yes, you could plow the streets on Shabbos because that's considered lefanenu. That's lefanav. That's lefanenu. Even though they didn't get the call yet. What's the difference? So I think the difference is that over here, right when they start plowing, right at that point, there's already at that point that there could potentially right now be a call that will be helped. There could be an ambulance, there could be a pekuach nefesh that will start right now. Whereas when they're building the hospital today, and they're not going to be finished the hospital for another 3 years, there's going to be no pekuach nefesh call right now. That's what I assume the difference is.
The pekuach nefesh call may not be because of the snow, but the snow is...
No, even not the weather, whatever it is, a woman's having a baby, I don't know.
Not because of the snow.
Not because of the snow. But there could be a pekuach nefesh call right now that this will help. Whereas the building the hospital, it's for sure not helping now.
Yeah, very good.
So I think that's the chilek. What about these terrorists? Letting them out. Is that pekuach nefesh lefanenu? Is that lefanav? Or is that rechaika? I think it's lefanenu. I think it's
As
lefanenu.
soon as you let them out, what are they going to do? They're going to join the war effort.
They're going to join the war effort. And even if there's some freeze or whatever, they're going to start with their terrorist activities right away. Day one. And I heard somebody say this, I don't know, check it up in the news. Last time Begilat Shalit, they asked them to sign a paper that they're not going to go back to terrorism. I think it was just as a... the Israelis knew, they're not stupid, the Israelis. It was part of their political, PR, international...
Getting money from America.
whatever type of thing, you know what I mean? And they refused to sign. And let's just be clear, we're talking about Arabs. They say one thing, why tell the truth if you could lie? Arabs. They still, listen, this is against my principles to sign that I will not kill Jews. That's what we're dealing with, you know what I'm saying? So I think for those people it's lefanenu, and therefore, to me, I would think that this is pekuach nefesh, and you're now shev al taseh ein doich nefesh leim nefesh, and my personal natia is you wouldn't be allowed to let them free. Now,
Even one for one there.
even one for one, the one for one I'm okay because you could say it's maybe lefanenu, but it's safek pekuach nefesh. 1 for 1, I could hear the argument that this is Vade and that's Suffolk.
When as soon as the one gets let out, you don't think he's going to join the others?
I would say there's an 80% chance that he'll go back to terrorism. There's a whatever chance that he's going to say, I don't want to have anything to do with this. I don't know the statistics.
It's a core of Levada, I'm saying. It's pretty
I don't know. We have to see what in economy. You have to be mavar what the mitzias is and what the statistics are, etc. It could be once again these guys. A lot of the Israeli spies come from people that they were able to turn. Also, so I don't, you know what I mean? Who knows? So fine. Now, Lemaisa, what did the poskim say? So by the Entebbe hijacking, the Stipler said that you could swap the terrorists, but the authorities could decide the other way. Meaning he wasn't saying a definitive psak, but he said his natia was you could free the terrorists for the Entebbe captives. But that's when this is the first time there was a lot of literature written on this, a lot of chuvas. So he said you could, but once again, if they decide not to, it's their prerogative not to. He wasn't pushing it hard. Rav Yashiv also allowed them to free the terrorists by the Entebbe raid. I mean, before the Entebbe raid, by the Entebbe prisoners. He said you could free them. And don't worry about the fact that you are causing them to kidnap more. They'll kidnap as much as they could anyways. They don't need any additional encouragement. Ravadia was also matter. He was matter by the Entebbe, and he was matter by Gilad Shalit because of the above reasons. And Ravadia threw in another reason that he says that a soldier needs to know that we don't leave him behind. A soldier needs to know when he goes into battle that if he gets caught, we'll do everything to take him back. And therefore, based on the psychological need, therefore we're allowed to trade. I don't know. I wonder if you polled the soldiers today and asked them, do you want us to redeem the captives or not? I wonder what they would say. I'm not sure. But that's, Once again, I want to point out, one could argue, this was, what they said in that Entebbe raid, they might say something different at this point in history. Because, there's a svar, in Gemara we say halacha kabasra. L'chayra, it's a little bit ironic. It's strange that you say halacha kabasra. Because surely as you read the Sederis, the earlier generations are greater, the later generations aren't as great. So why do you say halacha kabasra? The reason why you say halacha kabasra is because at the time that they got to the later generations, they saw a wider picture of the different opinions and what has transpired. Over here, I think we maybe could say that we see what has transpired, and doing these prisoner swaps has created tremendous problems. They all went back to killing. So maybe, I don't know, but it could be the Stipler, Rav Yashim, and Ravadia would maybe say different if they were around today. I don't know. By Gilad Shalit, Rav Moshe Sternbach said that Pidyin shivuim isn't without limits. You see the whole sugya of Pidyin shivuim. The whole sugya of Pidyin shivuim is showing that there are limits in place. And therefore, we can't swap terrorists because of the danger it creates. And it's vatay pekuach nefesh lefanenu. And therefore, it cannot be done, is what Rav Moshe Sternbach paskin then. And, I don't want to say he was right versus in psak, but whatever. Yeah, whatever. Yes. And Rosh Sternberg says even if it was the Gadol Hadar that was captured, we wouldn't be able to trade terrorists for the Gadol Hadar. Now, Rav Asher Weiss says that something interesting approach. He said Jewish life is of tremendous importance, and the value of Jewish life weighs more than Takanas Gezeres D'Rabbanan and more than Isurim. Everything's doicha because of Pekuach Nefesh. However, it doesn't mean that you necessarily make the swap if it's going to create bigger problems. So he says the whole sugya does not apply here. What applies is those that are in charge of security and have the greatest understanding of the Metzias, whether the Talmid Chacham or Amaretz. But whoever the ones are that have the greatest understanding of the Metzias, of what will create the greatest security for the Jewish people, shall decide whatever they think was the best in terms of the security of Klal Yisrael. Because that's what's more important than, I don't care about at this point I don't care anymore about whether you're being over the Gezerah D'Rabbanan and I don't know, of being paid too much, or whether it has a din of Ein Doichem this or whatever. It's, we care about the security of Klal Yisrael, and whoever has the most knowledge about making the decision of what's in the best benefit of Klal Yisrael should decide. The sugya is unapplicable, which I thought was it's very mistaber. It's like a little thing, like if the wrong person would say that, you would call them apikaris. But it's Rav Asher Weiss, so he's allowed to. But it's an
interesting way to word it. I would have thought that you would have said that is the sugya. I mean, the whole way to explain these things is that.
Meaning he doesn't care whether it's lefanenu or whether it's a din safek, a din vadai, whether it's din lefanenu, whether it's a din rechaika. That's not the point. He doesn't want to. I don't need to fit into those gedarim. I need to know there's a general matzah of pekuach nefesh, and I have to know in this general matzah of pekuach nefesh what's going to be best for the safety of Klal Yisrael. And ask the security people and the generals and the security people and the Shin Bet people and whoever it is who knows, who has a better understanding of the Metzias, of what's in the greatest, let them decide for whatever they know. He implied not to make the trade because that was his svara. I mean, he didn't say it firstly, but he implied that was his svara as to what's most important in the safety of Klal Yisrael. But he didn't say it explicitly. But he said, but it really, as he pretty much pointed out, it doesn't really make a difference what I, Rav Asher Weiss, think is in the greatest security, because this isn't my field. So I thought it was very interesting and seemingly very reasonable. Personally, Rav Sternbach's viewpoint and Rav Asher Weiss's viewpoint, they resonate with me. But Lamaisa, at the end of the day, there are multiple shitas. So, because there is a Rav Yashiv who seemingly allows, and there is a Rav Vadia that seemingly allows. So therefore, once that's the case, nobody could really point fingers and say what anybody's doing is wrong or usher. I think Hashem that I don't have to make these decisions, because I definitely don't want to. I don't want to be in Bibi Netanyahu's seat or whoever else makes these decisions. Very happy not to. But at the end of the day, these decisions need to be made. And Lamaisa, hopefully this should be a schus that we were oisik in the mitzvahs of Pidyin Shvuin, that that should be a Pidyin Shvuin dummy, and we should be zeicha to bring back those captives alive and well.
Hey, is there a difference